Welcome back, and joining me now is Rita Allen from Rita Allen Studios in Gadsden, Alabama. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Today we're going to be talking about something that probably more people than realize are called on to do, and that is to speak in public. And we don't have to be necessarily be talking about a large group of people. Right. But why is it important that we're not intimidated by speaking in front of groups of people?
Because so many times you may have brilliant ideas, you may have things that could help a group of people, and if you don't know how to speak in public, if you don't know how to get your ideas across, then regardless of how many good things you have to say, the people can't hear them and you can't make the impression you'd like to make.
That can even be true for, say, business-type meetings. If you're in a business and you're too embarrassed to state your idea or even ask a question, maybe.
Right.
So what are some of the tips you can give us if we were called on to make a speech, say, even in front of a small group of people? What's the first thing we need to think about as the person who's going to be speaking?
Okay, the first thing you need to think about is the setting that you're going to be in. What kind of people are going to be there, the topic that you want to get across. You need to go to several different sources and choose information, and then in your choosing of information, divide that up and say, okay, this is all good information, but what's going to apply just for this particular meeting? Organize it, put it in some kind of order so that as you begin your speaking to these people, sharing with them your ideas, you can incorporate some statistics, some examples, some instances. Naturally, anything that you can give that supports what you're thinking or what you're feeling that's substantiated somewhere else in history or by some other person, it will give more credit to what you're saying.
Now, is it more effective if you're speaking to a group to do it from memory rather than have to have your cue cards to continue referring to?
This is a common question in public speaking. First of all, it's not good to read your speech. That's so dead, and most people will get very bored with you. But cue cards are fine. I take a clipboard or cue cards, excuse me, almost everywhere I go because there are a lot of things running around in my head, and I want to be sure sometimes that I get everything across that I wanted to get across, as long as one thing remains from beginning to end, and that is that you're real. If you have something that's burning inside you and you have collected your information to support what you want to share with the people, if you have a few cue cards that just give subject titles, that just divide it up into such a way that you can glance down, look at the idea, and then continue talking, that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
So it's okay to refer to have little reminders there, like we all need.
Yes.
The next question is, should you or should you not use hand gestures? I'm one of these people who talks with my hands a lot, so I feel like I should sit on them a lot of times, but it's something I use a lot. Is that okay or not?
That is definitely okay. The reason some people are uncomfortable with hand gestures is because if they start like, you know, if they start to make big hand, you know, if they've seen people who have gone overboard so many times, and they've used big eyes, and they've used big hands, and they've used all kinds of gestures that are not real, that makes them look false. It makes them look fake. It makes them look like they've prepared this real good speech that's not really in their heart, and it's not really something that's burning inside them. It's just a nice thing to say, and they're having to use all these things to get it across. That's not effective with people. But hand gestures that are natural, that just come along with you and who you are fine.
Now, how do you like adapt to different audiences? For some audiences, is it more important to be more casual, some more reserved? How can you gauge what kind of audience you've got?
I'm going to answer this because I'm also a vocalist.
Okay.
I'm going to answer this sort of from the point of view of music also. There's so many times that I have stood up to sing, and there's some people in the audience that's smiling, and they're kind of keeping the beat with you, you know. And there's other people in the audience, when you look at them, they're just like, go ahead, make me feel good, you know. And you have to gauge what you do by the people that are enjoying what you're doing, because every audience that you are ever in, there's going to be some people that don't care anything about what you're saying, and then there's going to be other people that are just eating it up. And so you have to gauge, now, I will say this, if you start to speak and what you're saying, most of the audience looks dead, then you better do some things in a hurry that's going to gear it maybe in a slightly different direction. And that all comes from preparation, because if you prepare correctly for a speech, then you have several different avenues that you can take in order to appeal to the audience.
It's one of the keys to it, grabbing their attention from the beginning. And how do you always do that? I mean, sometimes you may not be talking about something that's terribly interesting to everybody.
Most people, that's true. Most people think that if you get up and tell a joke first off, then
that's the common icebreaker.
Right. That can be the case in most cases, but it's not always the case.
Right.
Because sometimes you get up and you're talking about a very, very serious situation, and it would be improper to tell a joke. But I will tell you this. Look for stories. Look for things that you can share with people that just get their attention right off the bat. And then once you get their attention, it doesn't have to be a funny story. It can be a very, like I was sharing with one of the ladies a while ago in the waiting room, when I'm talking about weddings to people, I have some horror stories about weddings that once I tell them, you can tell it reaches right down in and it squeezes their heart. And that's what you want to do. You want to grab their attention, but it doesn't always have to be with something funny.
Now, what can somebody do if they're getting up to make that speech and that heart starts pounding 100 miles an hour and they feel short of breath and all of that? How do they get out of that?
First thing you do, believe me, this works. I know it sounds too simple to be true, but it really does work.
Okay.
The first thing you do is you start breathing very deeply. You hold, I tell my students a lot of times, this breastbone right here, if you'll just pull it up, it lifts your rib cage up out of your stomach, gives you more place to breathe, to get, excuse me, to get more air down there. If you just sit up real straight and you start breathing deeply.
From the diaphragm.
From the diaphragm, and you start saying, I will relax, I will, and to yourself, I will relax. I'll tell you 2 reasons that we get really nervous. One is because we've not prepared well, and then you have a right to be nervous. The other is because of what I call butterflies.
Right.
Everybody just about gets butterflies, and that just means that this is a new experience, this is a new audience, this is a new thing that you're doing. It's just the next step in your life, and it's a little bit unnerving because there's unknown out there, and that unknown tends to make us have a little queasiness in our stomach. So there's nothing wrong with that, though.
And the final question, is the best speech a short one?
According to your audience.
Oh, okay.
There's some
Is there an
audience.
ideal time, though?
No.
Length time for a speech? No ideal?
I will say this, unless it's a very interesting subject, you should never go over 45 minutes to an hour, because that would get really, really long, and as short as 1 minute. But it would have to be something that the people really want to hear, and something you have done extensive research on for it to be interesting for 45 minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you for your help today. Hopefully this helps some folks out there who might have a speech coming up. You never know.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
All right, and we're going to have you back to talk about some of those wedding nightmares, too, one of these days. Thanks, Rita. And we'll be back with our weekly book review in just a moment. Stay with us.